as here. Today we are going to give my final impression of the Hoyt RX5 Ultra, and as you may know, if you watched my hunting season, that this is the bow that I used throughout the season. So this video is basically going to be just my final impressions and thoughts. I'm going to try to avoid giving a full in-depth review for those that have actually watched that review. So if you haven't watched my first impression video, or why I chose this bow, and my review on this bow, I will link them both down in the description below. And as you may know, if you're watching this video, Hoyt just came out with a few new models this year. So this is last year's model. So this is basically a video for those who would like to save a couple dollars by getting last year's model. Although I wish I was, I am not sponsored by Hoyt, so this is my personal opinion on the bow. And like I said, I used it for my deer season and part of my turkey season as well. So I have gotten a lot of time with this bow. I've shot it a lot during practice, and I have basically shot a lot of arrows out of this bow. So during this deer season, I took down 2 bucks and a doe. I guess basically what we're gonna do is take a look at what I've got on it and what I paired up with and what I do and do not like about this bow. So starting off, I paired this bow up with a Spot Hogg 5-pin sight, a tight spot 5-arrow quiver, a Hamskea Trinity arrow rest, and I'm using gold tip arrows with the QAD Exodus broadheads that are fixed, and I used lighted nocks this season as well. So like I said earlier, I did take 3 deer down with it this fall. I took down 2 bucks and a doe. My first buck that I took down was one of my target bucks actually, and I took another buck down later in the season, and I actually had so much penetration with that shot that I went through one side out the other and stuck right into a tree. So nothing that I've experienced before with a bow, but then again, I also haven't had the best experience with archery in the past. And then lastly, I took down a doe with it this season as well, and all 3 of those deer are probably the best shots that I've ever made with a compound bow. I'm not going to lie to you. I have always used a compound bow in the past, except for last season when my bow broke and I switched over to a compound bow, or a crossbow, for a little bit. And I've always had issues with penetration, consistency, and many other things as well. But when I upgraded to this bow this year, I was very pleased with how accurate and consistent it was. I would shoot probably way more than I should have this summer, just because I love shooting this thing. It was so smooth. It was so consistent, way more than my older bow was, that I would get so frustrated every time I shot. And once I had this bow dialed in, I love shooting it, because every single shot, I couldn't shoot at the same dot because I was scared that I was going to Robin Hood it. So I was very pleased with how consistent and accurate it was, which it's not necessarily a Hoyt thing. So I'm not just praising Hoyt here. I'm sure all of these new bow models would be just as accurate and consistent depending on what you prefer. But personally, this bow just fit me best, and that's why I went with it. It had the best draw cycle for me, and it did not disappoint. So basically, Hoyt has 2 models for the RX5. There is the RX5 and the RX5 Ultra. The reason I went with the RX5 Ultra is because of the longer limbs. Like I said earlier, that when I was younger, I would have so much inconsistency when I shot. When I shoot in the backyard, I would be able to hit the target, but every single time it felt like I would shoot at a deer, it would be high and to the right. So I don't know if I was putting too much pressure on the kisser button, or if I just every single time I shot torqued it, or what it was. So I did a lot of research before buying this bow and looked into what can fix that. And I found that if you have a longer bow, that it takes more to torque it than a shorter bow. So if you have a shorter bow, this much distance torques it a lot, while the same amount of distance doesn't torque the bow as much. So that is one of the biggest reasons I wanted to go with one of the longest bows possible. If you don't have that issue, I'm sure you could get away with going with the regular RX5, because that was just one of the biggest things that I struggled with as a bow hunter, was that consistency when the situation was intense or stressful and I could not, for some reason, shoot it like I practiced. But like I said, I shot this bow so much over the summer and spring because I did practice for turkey season as well. So I shot this bow so much and I was very happy with it. I've never been able to shoot past 20, 25 yards maybe, and I was able to be consistent at 50. I have pins up to 60. I just didn't want to go up to it this year. That's my goal for next year, just to be able to be consistent from 20 all the way to 60. So I think that bow is capable of it. I know the bow is capable of it because I've seen other people do it, but that is something I've always struggled with, is being able to shoot at 20 yards, and this bow has helped a lot with my confidence and has improved my accuracy a lot. So wrapping things up, would I recommend this bow? Absolutely. With all these attachments on it, at first I was a little hesitant or a little nervous when I got it home and started shooting it in the backyard, because when you don't have any of these attachments on it, the bow is extremely light. And the Spot Hogg sight and the Trinity arrow rest are both metal, and with the 5 arrows on the quiver, it seemed extremely heavy. It was heavier than my dad's old bow that I was using last year. So I was very nervous at first that the bow was so heavy. But later in the season, I found out that I actually liked the weight a little bit more. I took off the quiver every time I was hunting. I would just hang it up in the tree, and the weight actually kept me weighed down, because I shot my old bow again just to see in comparison for the noise in one of my reviews, and I felt like I could not keep that lighter bow steady at all because there was no weight actually keeping me anchored. So I felt like the heaviness of it actually anchored me down, and I preferred it this year. So, and like I said, it's not that heavy without the attachments on it. So if you want to go to the route where you get some lightweight arrow rest or lightweight sight, I'm sure it'll be a very light bow for you. But overall, this bow made me way more confident with my shooting. In the previous years, I grew to be very frustrated when I was bow hunting because I felt like I could practice as much as I wanted, and as soon as I got out in the woods and made a shot, that it would not be good. Like, I could shoot as much as I wanted when I was at home, but as soon as I got in the woods and torqued the bow a little bit, my shot always hit high and to the right, like I explained earlier. So this season, I got so much more confident. I don't even remember on any of my deer even looking through the sight. So that might also be a little bit of a factor as well, as much as I practiced with it, that it was just basically instinct at that point to pull back and shoot. Like, I do not remember looking at my pin at all, but it all worked out to be very good shots. Also keep in mind that I have not tried out the new Hoyt models either, so I do not know how this compares to this year's models. But if you are looking to save a couple bucks by getting last year's model, I do not think that is a bad choice for you. But my last recommendation to you is don't base what bow you get on what I or anybody else on YouTube says or what the reviews say. I suggest that you actually go to a dealership that has multiple brands and models of bows that you can actually go and try out. That is what I did. I went and tried multiple different models and different brands as well. And this is what fit me the best and what felt the best when I shot it. So keep in mind what you would like to try out and do your research on that, but also keep an open mind when you get there and get what suits you best. So that is my biggest recommendation to you, is to actually try out what you're gonna buy rather than basing it on what I say or anybody else says. I hope this helped you out figuring out if this was a good bow for you, and I hope this answered any questions that you may have had. Feel free to leave any questions in the comment section that you have, and I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. And if you want to see any of the hunts with this bow that I did this fall, I will link all 3 of them down in the description below. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful, and I will see you next time.